All right, let's get right into it. The new unified Microsoft Purview portal, it's a total game changer, right? It brings all your data security, governance, and compliance stuff into one place. It's super powerful, but as a lot of IT admins are finding out, sometimes the hardest part is just getting in the front door.
So, does this look a little too familiar? You're trying to get into the new portal, you're all set to get some work done, and nothing. You're stopped dead in your tracks. Well, if you've been stuck looking at this screen, trust me, you are not the only one.
And this is the error message that's been giving admins everywhere a major headache. It's kind of cryptic, it's definitely frustrating, and it completely blocks you from getting in. But, and this is the good news, there's a pretty simple fix, and we're going to walk through it right now. I mean, you gotta love this. This is a real comment from a public forum, and it just perfectly captures that feeling, doesn't it? When you're the one in charge of security and compliance, hitting a wall like this isn't just annoying, it's a serious roadblock. Okay, so let's turn that frustration into a fix. We're about to walk through the #1 solution for this login error. Seriously, think of this next part as the key that's going to unlock the whole unified portal for you.
All right, here are the exact steps. This is the fix that works for most people. First up, you're going to log in to the Azure portal. Then, just pick any Azure subscription you've got, doesn't matter which one. From there, you'll go to Settings and then Resource Providers. In that little search bar, just type Microsoft.Purview, select it from the list, and hit Register. That's it.
Now, here's a super important heads up. Before you even start, you've got to make sure you have the right permissions. You'll need to be a global administrator in Microsoft Entra ID, and you'll probably need to have owner rights on that Azure subscription too. Having that access ahead of time is going to make sure this whole registration thing goes off without a hitch.
And you're in. Nicely done. So now that you've actually unlocked the portal, the very first thing on your to-do list should be setting up permissions. Getting this right from the get-go is absolutely fundamental for good security and governance.
You know, Purview uses a permissions model called Role-Based Access Control, or RBAC for short. If you've messed around with other Microsoft 365 services, this should feel pretty familiar. The whole idea is to follow the principle of least privilege, basically giving people just enough access to do their jobs and absolutely nothing more. So let's break that down real quick. A role is just a bundle of permissions for certain tasks, like, say, managing e-discovery cases. And a role group is just a collection of those roles. Here's the key. You don't assign roles straight to people. Instead, you add people as members to a role group. It makes managing everything so much easier.
Now, this is really interesting because it shows you the hierarchy inside of just one role group. You've got the e-discovery manager and the e-discovery administrator. They're in the same group, but the administrator has way more power. They can do everything a manager can, plus they can see and manage literally every single case across the whole organization. That's a perfect example of that granular control we're talking about.
Okay, so theory is great and all, but let's put this into practice. We've solved our login problem, we've set up our permissions. Now, let's actually use those new e-discovery roles to run a really specific, high-value search.
So this here is the Activity Explorer. It's an awesome tool that gives you a window into what your users are actually doing with sensitive data. You can see when files are created, when they're changed, or when a data loss prevention or DLP rule gets triggered. It's your eye in the sky for data activity.
Okay, so here's our mission. We need to track down every single document, no matter where it is, that meets two very specific criteria. First, it has to contain U.S. Social Security numbers, and second, it also has to be classified with the highly confidential sensitivity label. This is a super precise compliance task.
And this right here is what makes that kind of specific search possible. The new e-discovery experience is built to work hand in hand with Microsoft Information Protection. What that means for us is we can search not just for simple keywords, but for specific sensitive information types, like those social security numbers, and for sensitivity labels all at the same time.
And this is just a perfect picture of the result. On the left, you've got the data map showing you how data is flowing and where it comes from. Then on the right, you can see the results of a search pointing to the exact columns in a database that hold sensitive stuff like credit card or passport numbers. That's what we mean by end-to-end visibility.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. We've gone through the technical how-to, but what about the strategic why? Why should your boss or your boss's boss actually care about a unified platform like Purview?
Well, the difference is pretty stark. The old way of doing things meant juggling a bunch of different, disconnected tools. That led to spotty visibility and made compliance a real nightmare.
The Purview way gives you that one unified portal, that single pane of glass everyone's always talking about. And that's what makes true end-to-end data governance possible.
And it all really comes down to these 4 core ideas. First, you have to know your data. You got to find it and classify it. Then you can protect your data with tools like encryption and access controls. That allows you to prevent data loss with DLP policies. And finally, you can govern your data across its entire lifecycle. It's a whole strategy, not just a tool.
And a huge part of knowing your data is actually powered by AI. Purview comes with more than 70 pre-trained classifiers that can identify really complex documents, not just by looking for keywords, but by understanding context. It knows what a resume looks like, or a contract, or even source code, which means you get incredibly smart and accurate data classification right out of the box.
So the whole point is summed up perfectly here. Purview works by scanning your entire digital world, on-prem, in the cloud, everywhere, and pulling out the metadata. It uses this to build a data map, which is basically a massive catalog that becomes the one single source of truth for all of your company's data.
And really that brings us to the final big question. I mean, think about it. Your data is everywhere these days, scattered across who knows how many different services and locations. The real question that Purview makes you ask is a simple one, but it's a profound one. Do you actually know where your most critical data is, and is it safe?